Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and you are at the home of the Forever Theater Kid. And today I'm coming back at you with another Bloody Broadway. Welcome back. This is my series where I combine my two biggest loves, aside from my husband and my dog, theater and true crime. In today's episode, we are paying homage by telling the story of a woman who was taken from us way too soon, but whose legacy lives on through her work. Today, we are talking all about Adrienne Shelly, the goodness, the yumminess, the deliciousness that is Waitress the Musical. Not only are we going to be talking about the musicals because the musical is so wonderful, but did you know that there's a tragedy that surrounds this musical, that surrounds this movie, that surrounds this whole story of Waitress? This is a really tragic story, but it also has a lot of beautiful moments. Watch to the end. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Give this video a like. Share it with your friends, anyone else who's obsessed with true crime and Broadway as well. And let's get on into it. All of my sources will be listed down below. I found this video by Georgia Marie. So she had a lot of really great information, really great resources. It helped me find resources. Her video will be linked down below. Trigger warning, this video will discuss topics such as suicide, robbery, sexual assault, a lot of abuse towards women, and murder. A couple of weeks ago, I was taking a voice lesson with the wonderful Kathy Deach. I was singing from Waitress, When He Sees Me. And I've always sang it and kind of played to the comedy, rather than playing to the characters' real anxieties. And Kathy was like, you know that the writer of the movie, who also directed it, played Dawn in the movie. And she was horribly murdered. And I was like, Oh, did you tell? It was like a weird gossipy moment, but you know, it was something I'd never heard about with a connection to a musical that is centered around violence towards women and kind of finding your own strength, right? I just thought it was like so interesting and I just wanted to hear more. Who was Adrienne Shelly? Adrienne Shelly, full name was Adrienne Levine. Adrienne Shelly was her stage name after her late father's name. She was born on June 24th, 1966 in Queens, New York. Known for being a brilliant actor, screenwriter, director in both indie film and off-Broadway. Adrienne kind of did what a lot of theater kids did when they were young. She went to Stage Door Manor. The movie Camp is based off of this very kind of elite type of theater camp. She followed that dream of theater and acting to Boston Conservatory. But she realized while she was at school, I believe it was her junior year, she dropped out and she was just like, peace, I'm over this. And she went back down to New York to really make a name for herself on her own terms. She was known to other actors as a force of nature, and anyone who acted alongside her, no matter how experienced they were in the acting realm, just in the industry, just couldn't take their eyes off of her. They just felt like they were getting so much from this woman, which is what you want in a scene partner. You want someone that's like gonna make you work for the scene. She was a very small woman, and especially in the 90s and, you know, the early aughts, the smaller you are, like there's no possible way that you could have power. Thank you, Adrienne Shelly, for proving them wrong. Though she is little, she is fierce. Adrienne's style of acting was very new, extremely deadpan. It made her characters layered and intriguing and made the industry just like perk up. They're like, let's get her in, let's put her in big Hollywood films. And Adrienne was just like, the Cali scene is not for me. The Cali scene is not it. Like, I am a New Yorker through and through. This is where I want to stay. And her main love was indie film. She appeared in over 20 movies. The ones that she's most notably known for are The Unbelievable Truth, Trust, Opera No. 1. These were all Hale Hartley movies. He had a very specific style. It kind of reminded me of like a Baz Luhrmann in terms of like, that's very Hale Hartley. But she was kind of known to be Hale Hartley's muse, kind of found her and was just like, you. And she was just like, me. She wrote, directed, and starred in 3 films: Sudden Manhattan, I'll Take You There, and of course, Waitress. She paved the way in so many ways, reminding people in the industry that women don't fit a mold. We can hold the power, and we can make a film so much more interesting. I'm biased. I think this quote was from Ali Sheedy. She would do this thing of balancing absolute courage with a sense of feeling pathetic. She was a brilliant, sensitive, wounded heart. Adrienne Shelly, you queen. It's November 1st, 2006. We are at the Greenwich Village apartment complex. A little after 9 a.m., her husband Andy dropped her off at the Abington Square apartment building where Adrienne had an office. Luckily that day, her daughter was not with her, and what a blessing that was. Near the end of the day, around like 5 o'clock, Andy came back to pick her up, and he just felt like it was so strange that he hadn't heard from Adrienne all day long. He was scared. He like immediately felt in his gut that something was wrong. He asked the doorman to accompany him upstairs because he felt like something was really wrong. So they go upstairs. They see that the apartment door is unlocked. The doorman stayed out in the hallway while Andy, her husband, goes in. He sees Adrienne hanging from the shower by a bedsheet. And it's a horrifying scene. He starts screaming, trying to pull her down, and Adrienne's gone. The police immediately ruled it as a suicide. They thought, well, this is an obvious case. But it wasn't obvious to anybody else. Family and friends, especially Andy, fought this. They fought it for days. They were like, no, absolutely not. There is no way in hell that Adrienne Shelly, fucking Adrienne Shelly, this powerhouse of a woman who had a thriving career, a loving husband, was infatuated with being a mother, would take her own life. But the saddest thing about that idea, I feel like a lot of suicide cases, people present happiness and they have it all together while there is a lot of inner turmoil. And I'm not saying that Adrienne Shelly didn't have inner turmoil, didn't ever have feelings like that, but her family was so insistent. They were like, we truly do not believe that Adrienne would have taken her own life. And thank God that they fought, because if they didn't fight this, then we wouldn't have gotten justice for Adrienne Shelly. Something that was really sad that I read was her husband racking his brain over like, maybe she was unhappy. Maybe I didn't know her. Like maybe she was calling out for help and I didn't see the signs. I mean, can you blame the man? Like, I would have been doing the same thing. I would have been like, what didn't I see? What could I possibly have known that morning she seemed so happy, and then hours later, the world has turned upside down. When the autopsy came back, it did prove that it was death by strangulation. Also, neck compression. I hate that term. People must have been like, squeaky wheel. We're just like, no. Family and friends, for the most part. And finally, the investigators were like, fine, we'll look into it more. So they continued to investigate. Why was the door unlocked? Why was there cash missing from Adrienne's wallet? And then they found the thing that all criminals who are so fucking dumb to leave: a footprint, a sneaker print. Because guess who wasn't wearing shoes at the time of death? Adrienne Shelly. But on the toilet seat, in a perfect shape, saying, "Look at me," was a Reebok shoe. Listen, I don't know what it is about Reebok and murders. You got the Night Stalker, you got this dude. I feel like I've watched like 4 other documentaries where they're like,
and he was wearing a Reebok sneaker.
Reebok. The print that was in the Reebok didn't match that of the husband. What's imprinted on the toilet seat is a shoe print in gypsum dust, which is not just any regular type of dirt. It is specifically dust that you find from a construction site. We're in New York City, so like, damn, there's construction everywhere. But specifically, maybe there's some construction happening in this building. And what do you know? The apartment right below Shelly's is under construction. So they're like, make their way on down. And they're like, hey, dudes, you hear that some crazy shit happened upstairs? And they're like, what? They were able to match the shoe print, the Reebok shoe print, to one of the workers on the job, Diego Pilco. The police went to Diego's apartment in Brooklyn and questioned him, and he immediately sang like a damn canary, singing like Patti LuPone. So not only did Diego have one confession, but he had two. So in his first confession, he said that Adrienne had come down to the construction site. Like we said, it was directly below her office apartment. He said that she came downstairs very aggressively and marched into the construction site and was telling everybody to calm down. I don't know if Diego was saying he was the only one on the site, because there would have been other witnesses. So he must have been saying that he was the only one there. What Diego was saying that Shelly said was that she was screaming at him because of how loud it was and that she couldn't concentrate and that she was gonna call the police. So out of fear, he said he followed her back to her apartment. I don't know why he thought that the best decision would be to follow this woman back to her apartment. He said he did. He went into her apartment. She said she's going to call the police. She slaps him, which I would. If a dude follows me into my apartment, you better believe that I am kicking and screaming. And then he said he punched her and that she fell backwards, hit her head, and passed out. In this confession, he said he felt that when she hit her head, he thought that he had killed her. And so to cover up an accidental death, he staged what looked to be her suicide. What? Why would you do that? Not that it makes a lot of sense. If you're really trying, you can be like, okay, I guess you felt like that was the only choice you had to make, but then you go, oh, no, there's always a choice not to murder someone. There's always a choice not to take it to that next level. That's just the human mind, solving problems. Fight or flight, at that point, flight. Just go, just leave. So that was his first confession, but he had a different confession come time of the trial. The investigators had come forward and been like, Adrienne didn't have any head trauma. If she had been punched in the face and then hit her head, falling backwards, there would be multiple bruises. He had scratches on his face that he didn't talk about how there was a fight between them, aside from the punching and the slapping. It leads to believe that there was a very different type of confrontation there than what was said. And they also realized, aside from the head trauma, which was ding, 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 red flag number one, red flag number two, remember that gypsum dust that was on the toilet seat that was clearly on Diego's shoes? The investigators realized that if you're in a construction site for any amount of time, especially in an apartment where that dust is probably everywhere, she would have had it somewhere on her person. Something's not adding up here. By the time we got to the trial, he had a completely different story. Story that was much more insidious and felt much more calculated, which is just why didn't you stick with the first one, my dude? Criminals can be really fucking dumb sometimes, am I right? So there were a couple of different accounts. One account said that Diego saw Shelly returning from lunch and followed her up. A couple other accounts said that he just found her apartment and the door was ajar. But regardless, Diego slipped into the apartment unbeknownst to Shelly, proceeded to try to rob her, to burgle her. He clearly was able to steal some money, and Adrienne hadn't closed the door. Women, we should not be, look what's happening in the fucking UK right now. Of that story with Sarah Everard. Literally, Adrienne was walking home. She was going up to her apartment. She shouldn't have to fear every second that someone's gonna murder her. But guess what? That is a daily fear of being attacked at all times of the day. And so I'm not blaming Adrienne that she should have instinctually closed the door and locked it, but it just makes me go, always lock your door. Please, the minute that you get into your home, the minute that you get into your car, check that back seat, double check it. And that should not be our job. But in the world that we live in right now, it kind of has to be. I shouldn't have to have my husband with me at all minutes of the day to feel safe. I just shouldn't.
Flames on the side of my face.
Okay, so Adrienne saw Diego and she screamed, "Random man in your house!" I would scream my tits off. And she said that I'm gonna call the police. And he decides in that minute to end her life. He went over to her to cover her mouth and choked her to death, and then proceeded to make it look like a suicide. I still don't think he initially intended to kill her. I did read one article, which I was just where's your basis in that? That said that he went up to assault her. I think there would have been evidence if that was his intent. From just so many other true crime events and murders that I've read about, murderers who are intent to murder don't try to cover it up, don't try to go through the lengths of making it look like it was a suicide attempt. All of it just doesn't come together and make sense. And it's just such a shame, because if he had just tried to rob her and she was like, I'm gonna call the police, she didn't know his name. We'll find out later that like the construction site didn't have a paper trail. He could have run and probably gotten away with it. The thing that's so infuriating is that if he had just run, she probably would have survived, because it was the impact of the bed sheet that strangled her. Because when he choked her, I think that he just made her pass out, but she would have woken up from that. Yes, she would have been traumatized. She would still be here. She would still be able to create work. She would still have been able to like raise her child. There's so much that her life had potential to grow into, and it just felt like there was no respect for her life, and I think that's bullshit. If he had stuck with his first story, yes, Daisy. Daisy's just like shaking her head like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. Are you Russian? Are you a Russian girl? It's strange that he would change his story. I wish we had more information on why he changed his story, but maybe it's because of the plea deal that he eventually got. So on February 14th, 2008, Diego pleaded guilty and received sentence of second-degree manslaughter, mainly because of his second testimony. There must have been some type of negotiation. There must have been more of a push in the... Yes? Are you just upset about this story? Yeah. Diego was sentenced to 25 years in prison without parole. The 16 months that he spent prior to the trial were served as time spent, so his sentence was even less. And this just like, this infuriated the family and her husband, and I get it. He was 19 years old, probably 20 by the time his trial went through. He'll still have, like, if he's a healthy person, he'll still have half of a life to live, and that's what's the most devastating part, is that Adrienne didn't have that chance. The husband, Andy, went forward, and this must have been in his sentencing trial, because usually in those trials, that's when family has time to like say their piece, which I think is good, because I think family deserve that if a loved one is taken from them. Andy said things like, I will never forgive you. My family will never forgive you. My daughter, you took her mother from her, and I'll never forgive you for that. Diego even had a minute where he asked forgiveness from the family, basically saying, my life changed too that day, which I'm just like, I got really angry when I first heard that. I got so fucking pissed when I was just like, oh, your life changed? Oh, your life changed? He said, I was having a bad day. That's why I did this. Him. Like, him hard. It just wasn't a good look, what he said. He asked for forgiveness. Adrienne's mother was just like, no, like was like slamming her fist saying, no. God, it just like breaks your heart. And the judge was even just like, you're not gonna get that here. You're not gonna get forgiven. That was in 2008. So
25 plus 2008 is 2033.
if his sentence goes according to plan and he serves his whole time, he'll get out by 2033. That's not that long off. By that time, her daughter she'll be in her late 20s by the time he gets out. Like, it just sucks. Obviously, Adrienne is known for so much more than the way in which she died. Her legacy is beautiful. Her legacy is really a testament to the people who loved her. In 2009, her husband Andy, set up the Adrienne Shelly Foundation. People were asking him, where can I send money? Where can I send money in Adrienne's name? When he found the strength within himself to be able to like handle that type of a project, because like what an undertaking, creating a foundation after your late wife, like I don't know how I could do it. He created this foundation in her name, and it's all for female creators, to provide grants and scholarships for young female filmmakers. I mean, if you're a female filmmaker or writer, screenwriter, or anything along those lines, and you're trying to find grants, go search out this foundation and apply. It's really changed a lot of women's lives. Andy also created a garden in Adrienne's name at the Abington Square Park on 8th Avenue and 12th Street in Greenwich Village. She would go to all the time to kind of get, clear her head and sit in while she was working. Right near where Adrienne worked, there was a beautiful plaque that they put down there. There was a ceremony in Adrienne's name on August 3rd, 2009. These two pieces of legacy were kind of put up very quickly. I think it was probably a really great way of healing. And at the ceremony, Andy said, "This has been a long but very satisfying journey to honor my late wife in the park she loved so much, across from the building in which she lived for many years, worked, and died." So let's talk about the legacy that we know so well, Waitress the Musical. Also, as I'm editing this, number one, it's August 4th, and August 3rd is the anniversary of the garden going up. Everything's falling into place because today, on August 4th, 2021, Waitress started rehearsals again. And I'm so freaking excited for Waitress to come back because it's just such a beautiful show. I'm going to talk about all in a second. I just think it's really cool how all of this is falling into place. So thanks, Adrienne. First Waitress, as many people know, started out as a movie, an independent film. She wrote Waitress when she was 8 months pregnant with her daughter Sophie. She wanted to make a movie that highlighted the complex relationship a woman forms with her own self and her own body during her pregnancy, and the life that they're leaving behind versus the life that they're going towards. Anytime that like a grown woman, especially a married woman, was pregnant in a film, usually it was met with just like joy and glowing and pregnancy is amazing. Where like, that's not how it is in real life for a lot of women. Like in the movie and in the musical, they might be in relationships in which they don't love that person, or, you know, that person might just not want a baby. Jenna decides to keep the child and to kind of figure out what's next in her life. And a lot of women who saw the movie were just really taken with that concept because they saw themselves in Jenna. A true representation of what the journey of pregnancy and early motherhood is like. What an incredible opportunity for Adrienne to have to live her dream while talking about something that had completely changed her life at the same time. She said that the movie Waitress was her baby because she wrote it as a love letter to Sophie. And actually, it's funny enough, not only does Adrienne appear in the film as the character Dawn, Sophie is little Lulu at the end of the movie. Waitress is a love story to also like women learning how to love themselves. Not everything is a perfect pie, you know? It's about working through the shit, and sometimes, hopefully, more often than not, you find a beautiful version of yourself. It's a film about the resilience of the female experience, the shit that's put on us, and how we decide to move through life and transform into the women that we're meant to become. That doesn't mean that you have to be a mother to experience this type of stuff, but this is just one journey that so many women resonated with. The people that it didn't resonate with, which was probably men, like one of the actors in the film said that people who didn't get Waitress felt that it tonally moved around too much, but that was entirely by design because Adrienne said that real life isn't compartmentalized, which is so true. She also said that you don't get to have your funny day and then your sad day. It's all mixed up. And Adrienne ignored the rules and captured that feeling. You watch that movie, especially as a woman, I watched that and I'm like, yeah, I wish I could compartmentalize my life. I wish I could have sad days and happy days. I find that like I'll be crying in the morning. I'm like giggling with my dog 10 minutes later. It was also a film that highlighted the silent violence that women so often endure, especially from their partners. How it all intersects is so like, it just makes you go, oh my God. Adrienne plays this character and created this character, Dawn. I'm putting it out there, I will play Dawn one day. She has so many anxieties about men. Well, they could be a murderer. They could hurt me in some way, like because she observes from her friends their unhappy relationships and she doesn't want that for herself. And so the anxieties of opening up to like a character like Ogie, stalker, can we talk about it? Like, I'm still like, why is she with Ogie? He wore me down, and it's like, oh. But I think that even speaks to what the character feels like her only options are. She doesn't think any other person is gonna love her, so she sticks with Ogie, who's like, he's a crazy dude. It's scary. And add on top of that, the normal fears that women have in their day-to-day life and like having to put ourselves out there to strangers. Like, I don't know if I could handle the dating world right now. Like, I'm holding on to Gabe for dear life. I would just be a dog lady for the rest of my life. Moving on. Unfortunately, Shelly would not ever see Waitress see the success that it created. It did beautifully at the 2007 Sundance Film Festival. It was just like chef's kiss. Everyone really loved it. Fox Searchlight Films picked it up and it went on to incredible box office success. Anyone you ask, oh, have you seen Waitress? They'll all go, oh, that movie. I'm talking like women of different generations, different races, different cultural backgrounds. Like, people just connect with that film. Now, finally, on to the thing that if you clicked on this, you know this musical, you know, like, like back of your hand you love this musical. Waitress the Musical. Oh, I loved it so much. I've auditioned for it so many times. I will be in it one day. I will be in it. This musical was written by Sarah Bareilles. She wrote the score. Lauren Lataro was the choreographer. Diane Paulus was the director, and Jesse Nelson was the writer. I think Jesse did the book while Sarah did the score. I don't know if you heard all those names, but they were all women. Hi. They themselves, creating this musical, made history. They are the first team of women that's like the big four: director, choreographer, book, and score. According to the League of Professional Theater Women, only 28% of productions were written by women between 2013 and 2014, off-Broadway and on Broadway. The numbers of female directors and female writers and female teams is so incredibly low. It's still such a boys' club, and it's insane. The numbers of plays and musicals that get picked up that are by women are so low, but they're the best out there. I'm saying it. When asked about it, Sarah Bareilles was just like, yeah, that wasn't my intent to be like, oh, we're just like gonna do like no boys allowed, like only girls. She literally went, we wanted the best that there was on our team, and they all just happened to be women. So, end of story, women are the best. I really like this quote. Sarah Bareilles said, "It's really fun to be an example of the way it can look. We're a bunch of women who are deeply committed to finding a way to build a unified vision." Do I wish there were women of color on that? Yes. Baby steps. We are getting there. Sarah Bareilles, even while she was writing the musical, she just said that she kept asking for Adrienne to like come into her heart and come into her like writing. She was just like, I just felt like I was inviting her all the time. I asked her questions during the process. I wanted to honor her legacy and make her present in the show. You can just feel the heart. The heartbeat of that show is Adrienne. I mean, every female character in that show is so complex. Every character in that show is so complex. I mean, even the late Nick Cordero, who plays Jenna's husband, like he even played that with the complexity that like you hated Earl, but then you were like, you kind of felt bad for him because he was just so pathetic. A musical based off of a movie, I feel like it lasted a good amount of time. It started its previews March 25th, 2006 and closed, honestly, right before the pandemic. On January 5th, 2020, it was at the Brooks Atkins Theater. Not only did it have a very successful Broadway run that had multiple celebrities playing Jenna, had multiple tours, it was on the West End. I think it's still on the West End. Manila, Philippines, Buenos Aires, Argentina, and it just opened up in Japan. And the preview for it in Japan just like looks so good. And what people kind of forget, which I kind of forgot until I read this, I was like, that's right. It's truly an immersive experience because they bake fresh pies. They let them warm up and fill the audience and the atmosphere with the smell of pie. Oh my God. I remember being in the theater and kind of just thinking my brain was going crazy, but then I was like, oh wait, they're selling pie like in the concession stand. Of course that's a smell of pie everywhere. We're in Jenna's world. What a legacy. What a legacy that although Adrienne was taken from our world far too soon, her work just lives on and will live on. Like the musical, it touches so many people's hearts in such a special way, and if anything, it's just going to be loved more and more and more. And it's like this, of all of her works, even though she was like a badass in everything that she made, like this was her baby. This was her love song. I hope that her daughter Sophie feels that. I hope that her husband feels that love. I know I felt that love. I know I felt like just a certain type of like connection to this piece while watching it. It felt like there was just like a motherly figure watching, like protecting you, like looking down on this show. It's just like there was something really magical about Waitress. Now after learning the story, it's just like, oh, that's Adrienne. That's Adrienne's magic. Her energy that she's putting into it from afar. That's her connection that she may not have seen it, but now she gets to watch it every single night of the week. That is Waitress. That is the story of Adrienne Shelly. Very, very sad, very tragic. It's a story that I'm really happy I learned about because now I feel like, I think I just honor Waitress more. I honor that character Dawn so much more. There's so much more depth to the character now. Adrienne, if you are looking down, I hope that I did your story justice. I'm so sorry to the victims' families, to Sophie and to Andy. This was a hard one. I feel like I kind of went over this with the Town and Gown murders. Doing doing videos on more recent events is really difficult. I think it's just because it is closer to home. Like Scottsboro Boys was just as hard because it's like that was not long ago. It just feels hopeless sometimes when so much shit is happening in the world, but then you have to remember that like there is beauty in the chaos. Things like Waitress the Musical get created. Things like Scottsboro Boys the Musical get created to tell these people's stories. It's just sad. And I hope that I did this story justice. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked this episode of Bloody Broadway, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more. I should have a lighter one coming out next week that just makes me mad, but should be entertaining. I hope it's entertaining for you. But yeah, thank you so much for joining in this journey of true crime and musical theater. I will see you in my next one. So give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends.